Welcome back to Spoken Soul, home of the essential athlete. Today we're going to be talking about Boston, but before we get into that, let's get into this. All right, we're ready to lace up and clip in. We are in April, and so once you hit April, a lot of things start to really move a lot faster when you start talking about running and cycling.
They bloom. Yep. It's
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. They
blooming
bloom.
season.
Yeah, yeah. You know, fortunately for us right now, we haven't hit that. You know, they say that April shower, Mayflower bowl, but April is really when a lot of things start to kick off, and particularly this April and next upcoming weeks, Patriots Day is coming up, and so you know what that means. Boston is one of the holy grails when you start talking about marathons.
It is.
And so today, I want to have a conversation with you, particularly because you've run Boston, about that experience. And the ambiance behind Boston. There is one thing. Well, first off, let's talk about some stats for Boston. I knew that there were a lot of people that ran it, but I didn't realize how many runners actually participate in Boston. And then as I was doing some research, I found out that roughly 30,000 people run Boston from nearly 130 countries.
Yes.
I can't imagine, and we'll get into this. I can't imagine the aura with that many people lined up to run such a historic race. And Boston's been going on for a long time. I want to say probably around 1897 was probably the first one. So I want to talk about your experience with Boston. But before I do that, there's something else that I'm not sure if you even know. I want to talk about something that maybe you didn't even know. I learned that the night before the Boston race officially kicks off, there's a bike ride.
I didn't know
that. I did not know this.
Know
They block off all these streets, and before the race actually happens, the night before, it's called a Boston Marathon Midnight Ride.
Wow.
Now, I would love to experience this at some point, but from what I gather, it is, there's no registration. It's basically a show and go. They roughly, I think typically they get about 23 to 2,500 people who actually ride the route. And so what they do is they kick it off in waves at 6 p.m. They'll do a wave, and they'll do a wave every hour. And then the last one is at midnight. But they basically ride the course the night before.
We got to
the runners.
We got
yeah.
That is officially on my bucket list.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to do that.
So, April 20th, 2026, Boston. It's coming up, and I felt that it would be only right for us to actually do a little bit or a little piece on Boston, and I wanted to make sure that I threw that bike ride piece in because for the most part, I don't believe that they have bike marshals at Boston.
No, I think it's they have like the
motorcycles.
And they're not the marshals, but the motorcycle brings in the winter.
So this is going to be a heavy run episode. But again, we're talking about Boston.
Boston.
Right? Let's talk about when you found out you were going to be running the Boston Marathon, what was going through your head?
I get chills thinking about it right now. And it's funny because I was supposed to wear it today. I should have wore it, but I still have my We Run This Town Boston Marathon shirt that I actually wore during that day. And I also still have my sneakers. And but what went through my mind was I was honored because the year that I ran was the year after the bombing.
Mm-hmm.
And I obviously I wasn't fast enough to qualify for Boston, but you can get it on a charity bib. So to be selected by someone who was tragically murdered by her family to represent their family and their charity, that in itself, and for it to be Boston, was everything. And I obviously we all know about the holy grails of different races that take place for running.
Yeah.
I mean, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of majors, but nothing's like Boston.
Yeah. So when I think of Boston, and I think a lot of people when they think of Boston, they really think about the end of the race. And when I say the end of the race, the city.
Yes.
But the start is not in the city.
Nope.
It's a completely different vibe.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the start line in Hopkinton.
The whole process of Boston is an experience and it's a vibe. You don't all start in different. They do similar to what they do with the bike ride, where when whatever your start wave is, that all dictates everything that you do. So I believe my wave was like 11 something. So for the whatever wave mine was, you had to go to downtown Boston. And the journey started there, where you would get on the buses, and they would give you like your bag of the bag to put all your end things in.
Mm-hmm.
So once you got to Hopkinton, you could give that, and then they would transport that back, so that once you finish, you could have whatever things that you had.
And that's because it's a one way.
Yes, it's not a one way. It's a one way. It's not a loop. So the ride to Hopkinton is it was amazing and beautiful because during that time frame, you get a chance to think about, it's very reflective, because at that point you're thinking about, did I train enough? What's this going to look like? And you've heard stories, it's almost like that aura of Jordan. Like, it's like, it's magical. And in your mind, you're like, is it really magical? But then once you get there, you're like, it's everything they said it was going to be.
Yeah.
So you ride to Hopkinton, you get off, you go into the athletes village, and the athletes village is amazing. It's like this little city. And in the city, there's all these athletes. So everyone's out there stretching, they're doing all this other stuff. They got food, all the other stuff. And it was, again, I've never been to the Olympics, but it was that kind of vibe. It had music, all these different people from all these other different cultures and everything are all interacting. And it's just, it's an indescribable experience, but it was, it was great. It was great to be there and be included in that, in that experience.
That's good. I didn't know about the actual village, and I'm glad you brought that up because, again, from the perspective of Boston is it.
Yeah.
I mean, you got Chicago, you got New York,
I don't like Boston,
but Boston is it. And so to get a little bit of insight into, that atmosphere and that vibe, that's pretty cool. And already, so those are two things that between the midnight ride and that whole village experience, those are two things that I think are pretty cool. Let's talk a little bit about preparation, and not so much what you need to actually prepare to get there, but a lot of times you'll hear this phrase that Boston is net downhill.
Oh my
God! And I think that when you hear something like that, you think, all right, this is going to be not as bad as I actually thought it was going to be. So tell me about the experience. Well, first off, I know that year that you ran, it rained the whole time.
Yeah.
But tell me about your experience starting from the start line as you progress through, the course?
Again, the whole experience was incredible. But there was some great things that were personal for me too. Like it started in Hopkinton, and then the next city that my wife and my aunt they had said, oh yeah, they're gonna come up and they're gonna cheer me on, and my wife had told me, she's like, yeah, we're gonna go up, but you're probably not gonna see us. So I think it was probably at mile probably 4-ish.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm running down, and I just, I hear my name, like hear my name calling me. My wife has this crazy sign up with my picture. So I go and I give her a kiss, and I see my aunt, and I keep going. So that, that was cool. But just the vibe, not just for me personally with my wife being there, but just the people in general. Like it is like the event. Like you have people from all walks of life, all ages, out there, on the side of the road with these signs. They're ringing the cowbells.
Yeah.
They got Vaseline sticks. Hell, one of them, I think they may have had beers. So the whole experience, just going your way through and getting to that destination. But the hills, that net drop, whatever. Listen, the hills make it worse.
So let's talk strategy for a second, right? So the finish is obviously it's lower than a good portion. That's probably why they call it net downhill, because the finish is lower at a lower elevation than the rest of it. But obviously somewhere in there you got Heartbreak Hill. But
Heartbreak Hill.
there's some rolling hills in there that if you're not careful of, you can put yourself in. Well, I guess it depends on your strategy, right?
Yeah.
I think that if you're not careful when it comes to making sure you keep in mind that you're running a marathon,
Yes.
you might be pacing yourself where
Yes.
you feel like this is a little bit easy,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
then you push yourself and you fall into a trap.
Yes. And I think what you say with that is, and that's, luckily that was my fourth and last marathon. So I had marathon experience, which I thought was really good. And actually, I had come off of a high. I think I had broke 4:30 at the Providence Marathon. So, I was feeling myself. So so I knew at least I could finish.
Yeah.
And I had 3 under my belt. So I kind of knew the whole, pacing piece of it. But again, nothing prepares you, because those rolling hills, they're deceptive.
Yeah.
Like they're deceptive. Like you're running and you're like, like it's not like it's a steep hill, but it's like a little bit up. It's kind of like Zwift. You get those little hills, and then over time it's like, I gotta pace myself so I'm not burning myself out.
Yeah. So the first 4 to 5 miles, how'd you feel? Did you feel that? Did you feel that the first, because from what I understand, the first 4 miles can pull you into a trap.
Yes. But again, I had experience, but at the same time, I think it can pull you into a trap because it's the aura. Like you're
okay.
Imagine us running the Providence half, and like how amped we are at that point in time. Imagine that by like 100. It's almost like you're ODing on, like, like you're just so souped. You got to pull yourself in. So I struggled not running it. I struggled trying to mentally calm myself down to be like, hey man, like don't get out here in these first 5 miles, and then you got to walk the last 5 miles.
Yeah.
So that for me was good, and I had tried to I made myself run a little slower than I normally would, just so I could say something, because again they preview the course, so I knew about Heartbreak Hill.
Yeah.
I strategically studied the course, so I knew what was going to come, and I again I wanted to make sure, that I didn't burn out.
So I should have looked this up, but Heartbreak Hill, is that what portion of the race is that?
I think Heartbreak Hill is like kind of like toward that like
Toward
the middle toward
the
like
end.
the endish.
All right, so let's talk about this. Halfway through the race,
Yep.
there's this tradition that
First of all.
Wellesley College has. They
Man.
cancel classes,
Yeah.
and all the students come down to watch the race.
Listen.
And they form this tunnel, which is famously known as the Wall of Sound.
And not just the wall of sound.
Well, the tunnel of sound.
Listen, not just tunnel of sound. Listen, that was my favorite part of the race. And it was because, again, you can, and I say this, you know, Boston's everything. Like, I had heard about Heartbreak Hill, and I heard about how the Wellesley students go out and they do that. But there's different things too. Again, it's an all-girls school for those who don't know. So it's an all-girls college. So we used to party there when I went to Northeastern, by the way. But there's this whole stretch of the race where there's all these girls, and they all have these different signs, you know, saying different things, and just get caught up in the moment. You know, one girl had a kiss me Brazilian sign, and there was other different things, and it was cool, you know, and the vibe of it was just like that tradition is great because it you know, and especially at that point during the race too, because it's almost like you get an injection of energy
Yep.
and vibe, like because at that point you're like, all right, you know, you've gone through some of the hills, and you're like, you know, and again at that point it has still been raining, and it didn't rain that much during that portion of it, but it was one of those things where when I got there I was like, oh, you know, it was a bit of relief. I'll just say that.
Yeah, and it's good. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to preview Boston, not so much from a technical perspective or from really a race prepared perspective. Again, we talk about the community, and we say this as many, and we've run a lot of races,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I don't consider myself a professional. I'm an enthusiast,
Yes,
and
that's a great word. That's
I
a
think
way to say it.
people should know that there are opportunities that are going to
Yes.
allow you to take advantage of an experience like Boston. As you said,
Mm-hmm.
it is an experience. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to touch on that experience, and so that's why I wanted to make sure that we covered this, particularly because it's coming up, not just for individuals who might be planning on running it, but people who might be considering or may have the opportunity to do something like you did, and just get a feel for that whole experience, right? So you hit the wall of sound. You run by the Brazilian who says, "Kiss me, I'm Brazilian."
Yeah.
I'd have to imagine that your next challenge or your next experience is Heartbreak Hill.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about Heartbreak Hill. What, first off, did it break your heart? And two, what about it do you think leads to that name?
I think because at that point, like you're somewhat midway through whatever it is, and you know also too. I mean, there's different, I guess, philosophies as far as when you're running a marathon where you hit certain things. Like some people say, you know, you hit the wall at 20. You know, so that's, you know, sometimes they say it's 15 between 20. So you got that space where you can potentially hit the wall, but then you're doing rolling hills. You know, and I walked some of those hills. Like like it was to the point where, you know, again, it was raining, you know, like everything is wet, everything is rubbing.
Yeah.
You know, and again, you know, we always say, you know, anything can happen on race day, but it's one of those things like you never prepare for that. So for me, it was, it didn't break my heart. I mean, again, I think because I had experience. Now, if that would have probably looked different if that had been my first marathon, you know, where I hadn't gotten the experience to, you know, to hit the wall or to go through, you know how it is. Like when you go through those challenges during the race, you know, it's kind of like that cartoon that they have when they talk about the 7 stages of running a marathon. You know, you just start out and you're happy, and then you're kind of midway, and then you're crazy, like, why did I do this? Then you're angry, and by the time you get to the finish line, you're back to being happy. And when can I sign up again? But you know, I think at that point, you know, you just shifting your mentality as far as, okay, I got to get back on track to try to finish this race. So that's where I was at that point.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier the sit-go sign.
Oh my God.
And if I'm correct, that's right near Fenway, and I think they try to time that game so as people begin to finish, the game gets out
Yep.
and you get the support of those people actually
Yeah.
coming out. So, two-part question. One, did you experience that? And two, when you saw that sign, what was your feeling knowing that, all right, this is almost complete?
Well, we didn't, because I think that the game was rained out that day.
Okay, all right.
So I didn't get that opportunity, but I knew what that meant because I went to school in Boston, so I was familiar with the course. But when it's almost like the Warriors. Like when you see that sign, you're almost home. So when I turned and I saw the sign, I'm like, okay, like it's like, the suffering's almost over, and if I can just sustain it to get to the end. And I had felt good. Again, I didn't, it wasn't like I wasn't winded or anything. It was more of, I was fighting a mental battle with the elements than anything else, because that was the thing, I mean, and again, because you're a runner, if you're running and it's raining, no matter how good your sneakers are, after a while, if you got water on them, it's almost like the shoes become weights.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, and that type of thing. But it was, I knew at that point, and I started to internalize and really reflect about the race, and think about what that experience, the collective of what the experience meant, because I knew it was almost over.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's what it was at that point. And it was kind of like a sigh of relief too, like I'm almost there.
Yeah, so I know some of your training must have prepared you for the rain, and I say that because I've been out there with you. And my phrase is I'm undefeated against the weather, but I have to imagine. I remember. I don't know if it was that marathon that you were training for, but you were training for a marathon. I was training for a half marathon. It was me, you, Court. It was Monique.
Yeah.
That's the day that her
Monique's phone.
Yeah.
Oh man, we started using bags after that, right? The Ziploc bags. Yeah.
I mean, it rained so hard that day that I think I might have ran 10 miles that day, and you guys were doing something ridiculous, because I think Court was actually training for a marathon too. Did that prepare you for the constant rain, right? Because now, think about it. You said it. Your shoes get heavy. Mm-hmm. Your clothes are wet. Mentally, that can take you out of whatever strategy that you actually have.
It was, and again, collectively, as far as what we were doing, and I think it was probably a totality of everything that we had done prior to that, because when we had trained for and Court still says that he shouldn't have ran that second Newport marathon, but that's a whole nother issue. But during those training periods, we were running at 11, 12 o'clock at night. So our bodies were getting different looks for different scenarios at every different, the runs that we were running, in addition to that run. So that definitely helped. It was just okay, you've been here, and you're hoping that, it's not gonna go so long that, you just mentally give up. So I have to say that experience was good. And I think also even now too, I think from what our mindset's always been, we don't, I mean, unless it's pouring when it starts, we don't care if it rains. We're going to get out there. Even when Court and I ran last weekend, it started to rain. And it's funny because we had, I go to LA Fitness, and I end up running into a guy who who swims there too. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I saw you and your buddy out there running in the rain." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what we do."
Yeah.
So you think about, and that saying that we say too, anything can happen on race day. And I was actually glad for that I had that, that I had that experience, and it didn't it didn't deafen or it didn't demean, the experience that I had in Boston. Actually, it made it really more triumphant, because I recall, and I don't know if you remember, because I haven't ran in a long time, but my little tradition that kiss the bricks.
Kiss the bricks.
Listen, when I got to that finish, first off, when you turn and you eventually get to that and it's a straight. Listen, I saw that finish line, I was like, I gotta get to the finish line, So I picked it up a little bit, but when I got to the finish line, all I could do was I was like, they must have thought I was praying down there or something. I stayed down there I kissed it, but I stayed down there, and I was just, I was just grateful that I was able to do it and experience it. Some things that some people, there's runners that are much better runners than me, but I had the opportunity to experience that, and I'll be able to tell my grandkids, and they'll be able to tell their grandkids, that I did that, and then I was part of that experience, especially. The significance of it after the year after the bombing, where everything was heightened,
Yeah.
and there was so much precautions, and it was pretty much elevated, And a funny key fact too is, we didn't talk about it. Maybe if we do have some time, before the race is really what gets you amplified.
Oh, so listen, I mean,
like when you talk about, like when you got to go to pick your bib up, like as you would a regular race.
So now for big pickup, is that the day of?
No, there's like a couple of days before. So
okay.
you go and you do that, but it's in this big hall, and like a big hotel thing, and you're in there, you're seeing all these people, and it's almost like like you won the lottery. You go in there, you get your bib. But most importantly, the Boston tradition of, you buy the Boston garb, and it's funny because I mean, me, us, we're shoe hoes.
Yeah.
So, that year, which is crazy, I still have not touched my Boston garb. Like every year I say I'm gonna wear. Matter of fact, I turned 55 this year, so I'm actually gonna use it this year. Then that'll been 10 years, 11 years, but. Once you do that, there's City Sports. City Sports is only like the official, gear place for Boston.
Yep.
So once you go there, I went there. I bought my my Boston warm-up jacket, which was, I think the year that it was purple, orange, and white. And me being the shoe hole that I am, I found some Nike structures that are that same exact color. I still haven't worn them yet. But it's that whole experience, of going through that. They have, as they would with like regular races, where you would go in and they'd be like different vendors or whatever else that you go through to do that. So that was incredible too, and like when all of that's going on too, it's amped up as well because they're painting the street.
Yeah.
So the street shut down. Yeah. They're painting the street. They're putting up all what is it? The rails, all that other stuff. They're putting up the stadium seating that they have for like the dignitaries or whatever. So you're walking through all that and you're just taking it all in, again, which is like the aura of Boston. So it was. I have to say, I've done a lot. We've all run a lot of races, but for me personally, that was probably, if I don't ever run another race, that would have filled my cup up.
Yeah, man, you got the chance to run the Holy Grail. So we have all these sayings, right? And the sayings really help us mentally prepare for the work that has to go in beforehand. Like, run the mile you're in. Nothing stops the run. Undefeated against the elements.
No bitch assness.
Yeah. Almost forgot about that. But yeah, so taking all that into account, if you had to give someone advice who has the opportunity, and again, I look at this, I see Boston in a couple of ways, right? I mean, it's one of the races where you get some of the most elite runners coming out to compete. But at the same time, that experience that you just talked about, it's an opportunity to actually be a part of that experience and take that in. If you had the opportunity to give someone some pointers, some advice, or some things to actually keep in mind, who had plans on running to Boston, what would that be?
I think I would say what we've always done is hill training. I think hill training is important.
Hills pay the bills, that.
Yeah, that's just saying hills pay the bills. I think that piece of it, because there's good portions of it that are flat, but the hill piece is what's going to help you with your stamina, and really what's going to help with your strength too. Because once you get to those rolling hills, if and we did, and I think that's probably what saved me is that we had been doing things like the snake route.
Yeah.
Even the route that we run now, and we do that route. So we ran routes that had the hills. So I had a good foundation, not just for the distance endurance piece of it, but also for the strength part of it, to get through the hills. I think that would be, and it'll be much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Than you just have to struggle through it. That'd be the best advice I could give them.
Yeah, and I think I would throw on to that too. I've seen this a lot of times. Sometimes your nerves get the better of you, and when you hit that start line and that gun goes off, and you just pace yourself. Realize that it's 26.2, and you mentioned it. The thing with those hills is, hills pay the bills, but those hills can be taxing on your quads and on your calves. So you need to make sure that you actually adjust.
And I think you make a good point too. And I think that's not just with that race, but just all of, again, as an aging athlete, I've had to learn to understand my body more in the sense that, it's not, it's not about where you start, it's where you finish. And a lot of times, I think we all want to just get out and just go ham. And, even some of the people that we know, like they get injured that way because, you got to ease into it, and that's one of the things that I think that's probably the most important lesson that I learned from Boylston, that took me into other things that I did was, you got to ease into it, everything, even if you want to get to, if your pace is 9:30, doesn't mean necessarily you got to start out at 9:30.
Exactly.
Like depending upon where you are, your body may take a little time to warm up. And they got to get to that versus, like you said, with the whole machine piece, like your body's a machine. Like if you run your car and you run it fast, you're going to blow it, versus let the car heat up. Once you get to where it's warm, then you do what you got to do, keep it moving.
Yeah. So I think it's appropriate to finish on this statement that we've always said, but I don't think we mentioned it in this episode, particularly when it comes to whether it's Boston, whether it's any race, Chicago, New York. And that was one thing that I wanted to ask you before I actually say this. So the hill perspective, Jamestown, Rolling Hills, or Jamestown, Narragansett, or Boston?
Jamestown's giving them a run for their money, man. I mean, I probably would have to give Jamestown because Jamestown is, it's deceptive.
Yeah, it is.
It's deceptive. And even I know you're talking about Jamestown, but I would even throw Narragansett.
Narragansett, yeah.
Narragansett is like.
Narragansett is one of those ones that you don't expect.
So yeah, so that's kind of. But I think from a Rolling Hills perspective, I mean, it could be. Narragansett, it's close.
Okay.
But Narragansett definitely has it. I think the thing with Boston is that, it's it's kind of like up and down, up and down, up and down.
Yeah,
up and
yeah.
down. When Narragansett, is it's kind of sneakily, and they may have a little bit more steepness, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. So great experience for Boston. I'm speaking for Anthony. It was a great experience. There's something that we always say, regardless of whether or not we're going for a ride or a run, and that is finish what you start. And I'm surprised we didn't actually hit upon that. But when it comes to whatever it is that you're actually choosing, remember, as long as you finish what you start, then you're doing what you need to do, right? So thanks for taking the time to sit in with this session with us. We'll talk to you again soon. What's good, everyone? This is Terrence from Spoken Soul. We're just getting things moving. We got a lot of stuff in store for you guys. So if you want to be part of the community, please be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so we can keep you up to date on everything we got going in the draft. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.